What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Nick and Bush coming at you with the first official week of DFS content. It's our first week of real football. We got a little taste of it last night with the Texans and the Chiefs game. Nick, how you doing?
Yeah, man, doing good. I am super excited. I felt last night, we're recording this on Friday and looking at Thursday night game. It was just nice to check out. It felt normal, like some of the sports as I've been watching, it hasn't felt totally normal. It hasn't felt like, pre-COVID times. And last night when I was watching the game, I was just like, man, yes, at football, we made it. We really made it. And it was an exciting game. So yeah, excited to talk to Slate, excited for football.
Awesome. All right. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be giving you DFS lineup advice, obviously. We're going to talk about, we've tiered each of the players. So we're going to be talking about who you want to pay up for, who's kind of the mid-grade, the 91 octane type players, and then who's the bargain bin, who you getting at a value. And what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about FanDuel specifically. So anything that comes out of my mouth from like prices and all that stuff is all FanDuel. And anything that Nick talks about is DraftKings, because I know like those are the majority of people play on those two sites. And I wanted to get exposure to both of them. So I figured one of us would talk about one and then the other would talk about the other. So at the end, we're also going to be talking about our favorite stacks of the week, our favorite matchups to target, so specific games. And then whoever like our lock of the week is, like who we want in all of our lineups type of thing. So we're going to hit the intro and then we'll get right into it. All right. So first up on the docket, we're going to be talking about the quarterback position. On FanDuel, to me, it's a very obvious play. If you're paying up for quarterback, to me, I know you have a different guy than me, and it's pretty similar in terms of FanDuel and DraftKings, but I think Russell Wilson's the play if you're paying up at quarterback. Second highest over-under on the entire week, on the entire slate, and you got a rookie starting corner in his debut game. And I saw last year when Russell Wilson was playing against a rookie corner in his debut game, which was Jamel Dean for the Bucks. He literally targeted him like 14 times. Like he just like abused the rookie corner. And Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both smashed that week. And I kind of expect more of the same.
Yeah, I love Russ. I mean, I'm going to be talking about Russell later. And in general, I love him as a player. I love him this week. I did go in a different direction. But in general, that Seattle offense is just a nice one to target. On FanDuel, you can actually pay up for quarterback. I feel like on DraftKings, it's not typically optimal to actually pay up. But on FanDuel, the prices are pretty tight as far as like a cheap quarterback. Like I want to say that Joe Burrow is like 7,200 and Russell is like 80. Russ Wilson is like 8,100 or something. Like it's like
66 and 84.
Okay, so still like pretty close. Closer than in DraftKings. Like Lamar is my like top guy, and he's at 8,100. Which if you compare him to like, I mean, you can play Jimmy Garoppolo at 5,800. That's like a huge. If you can play Tyrod Taylor for 2,500 less. Yeah, so I think Russ is really in play.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, maybe you're new to DFS, FanDuel has a $60,000 salary cap, while DraftKings is 50K, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So the prices, like they might seem like, oh, why is FanDuel so much more expensive than DraftKings? It's because the salary cap is different. That's why. So in terms of like the middle tier of quarterbacks, I actually think Carson Wentz, I expect to be very highly owned. So I think in GPPs especially, but in cash as well, I actually like Aaron Rodgers. I think Carson Wentz is the chalk this week. Everyone pretty much knows to play Carson Wentz, at least that I've kind of heard from and whatnot. The Vikings have all new starting cornerbacks on their defense, and PFF actually projects Mike Hughes, Holton Hill, and Cam Dantzler as the starting three corners, not Jeff Gladney, who is their their second first round pick after Jefferson at corner. So I mean, Mike Hughes and Holton Hill haven't graded out too hot from PFF the last couple of years they've been in the league. And then Dantzler's probably he ran like the slowest 40 time of anyone in the PFF system, like at corner. So I actually really expect the Packers to put up some points against the Vikings in this game.
Yeah, Rodgers in a good spot. He's not particularly someone I'm focusing on this week, but he is in a good spot. Wentz definitely has been focused on a lot. I think the more I find out about their line and the injuries to the line, I'm scared. Washington has an incredible front. They really do. They have an awesome, awesome defensive line. And yeah, I don't know. Wentz going deep to Deshaun Jackson is just looking a little bit more sketchy as time goes on. So going to my mid quarterback, it's it would have been Wentz if it wasn't for the injuries, but I went with Matt Stafford. So I love Matt Stafford this week. That Detroit Lions Bears game, I feel like is getting slept on because it just sounds like a boring game when you think of the two teams. But in reality, the Lions team is very exciting, and for some reason, I've just got this gut feeling that Mitch is going to come out and have one of those ceiling games where he at least just puts points up on the board enough to kind of keep the game paced and keep Matt Stafford throwing. So I love Matt Stafford in all formats.
I don't know what Mitch's price is like on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's not the greatest. It's actually higher than Joe Burrow's and stuff. But if he's really low, I actually don't mind him for tournaments.
Yeah, he's 5,400. Yeah, I've actually got him as my GPP value target.
Yeah, I see. He's actually pretty high. I'm pretty sure he's 6,800 or 6,900 on
I
FanDuel.
think he might even be over 7,000 because I remember looking on FanDuel and being kind of floored. I think he might be 7,200 on FanDuel. He's for sure more expensive than
he is 6,900. He's ahead of the guy.
Okay.
Here's my value play at the quarterback position. It's Teddy Bridgewater. This is almost strictly a game script thing for me. I think the Raiders are going to get out to a hot start, whether it's Jacobs, whether it's Ruggs, whoever. I think the Raiders are going to pounce on the Panthers early on. The Panthers have a new coach. They didn't have a preseason. They have 7 new starters on defense or something like that, or 6 new starters. And I think they're going to get torched in this game, to be honest. And I think Bridgewater is going to have a lot of throwing opportunities right out of the gate. And I really like him as just kind of a volume play at one of the lowest price starting quarterbacks that there is on FanDuel.
Yeah. So when I'm dipping down if I'm kind of going for a cheaper quarterback and I'm looking for a cash play, I'm going to go more towards the direction of Tyrod Taylor. Even Jimmy Garoppolo on DraftKings, he's pretty reasonably priced. Those are going to be my guys in cash. In GPP, we kind of just talked about him. I like Mitch Trubisky. The problem with Tyrod and why I wouldn't necessarily go with him in a GPP is I just feel like the Chargers are going to play slow this year. Yeah. I feel like they're going to slow it down. It's hard to really know what there's Keenan Allen, Mike Williams is kind of hurt. It's hard to really know what they're going to look like. So I don't really feel good about Tyrod's ceiling. But in cash, with his legs, I feel like he could potentially run one in, even if he throws for a couple. You're sitting pretty good at 5,600. And yeah, Mitch Trubisky, I feel gross about playing him, and I think pretty much everybody does. But it's Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, and Tariq Cohen, and that's it. And on the Lions side, it's Matt Stafford, it's Marvin Jones, it's maybe Galladay. If not, it's even tighter to TJ Hawkinson. So it's very tight as far as the players to target in the game. And that's exciting. We like that. We can stack that up. You can build it huge. If you have Mitch Trubisky, he's 5,400. You can play him with Allen Robinson. You can play him with Cohen. You can play all the guys and kind of set your lineup up and really stack the game.
Yeah, for sure. And another guy in a similar vein as Bridgewater is I like Minshew as well. On FanDuel, he is 6,700. So again, I think just a game script thing as well. I think the Colts will probably get out to a pretty hot start against the Jags and might be a lot of garbage time for Minshew and the Jaguars. So moving on to do you have anything else on the quarterback position? You want to move on to the running backs?
No, yeah, that's good.
All right. So the running back position, the guys I'm paying up for are actually both from the same game. It would be they're pretty two obvious guys, and Jacobs and McCaffrey. I think McCaffrey, obviously you just play McCaffrey because he's McCaffrey. He's 10,000 on FanDuel, but he's going to 2.5x that, because he's McCaffrey. He's probably going to have 25 points in against a horrible Raiders run defense. At least last year it was, and they really they added some linebackers, but a lot of those guys were more coverage guys than Littleton and Kwiatkowski. But Jacobs, from Jacobs' perspective, the Panthers were actually the worst run defense in the NFL last year, and like I said, they have a lot of new starters on defense, and a lot of those new starters are up the middle, with Derek Brown and losing Luke Kuechly and all that stuff. I think it should be a positive game script for Jacobs as well. I think as I mentioned, I think the Raiders get out to a pretty hot start against the Panthers, and Jacobs is able to eat the clock and probably run in a couple touchdowns. I also really like Austin Eckler too. I mean, like for cash, I think he's really safe because the Bengals run defense also terrible. I think at least early on while the offense finds its footing, I think you kind of touched on it with Tyrod. I think they're going to be a lot of like Keenan Allen checkdowns and Austin Eckler checkdowns. Like I think it's going to move at kind of that kind of pace. So I really like those three guys if you're going to pay up at running back.
Yeah, so I think definitely just, for anybody that maybe is new, don't play Josh Jacobs and Christian McCaffrey in the same lineup. If you're going to play one of them, pick one or the other. You just don't really ever want to play running backs against each other, even if you've got a pass catcher. Just it kind of caps the ceiling. If Josh Jacobs is dominating, then it probably means that they're killing a lot of clock, and therefore Christian McCaffrey can't be on the field, and we don't want that when we play 10K for a player. But yes, I like both their spots in general. Christian McCaffrey is a guy that I'm going to pay up for cash. He's like my top tier running back guy. If this week we have some value guys at running back, like we'll talk about them a little later, but like the Gibsons, like in cash, the most popular stack this week is going to be Christian McCaffrey and Antonio Gibson. That's what people are going to play. In GPPs, I don't think you have to have him. In GPPs, I'm definitely not going to have Gibson. I'm going to pivot off.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be chalk.
If McCaffrey scores 50 points, you have to have him. But that happens very rarely. So at 10K, if he scores 30 points, you still don't have to have him. Like guys like Dalvin Cook, even Miles Sanders, like a lot of people have ceilings to where they could still get 30 points and you can save the money. So in a tournament, I don't know. I'm probably going to pay down and go off of McCaffrey. That's where my lineups are going. But in cash, I love him. Kind of just rolling into the next pick. And these guys on DraftKings are all kind of grouped together. So like I love Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler. I like those guys. I really like Kamara. But my main choice that I went with the middle running back is Miles Sanders. Despite the injury, despite the potential worries, he's only 6,300. And even if I don't think he's going to get 25 touches because of the injury, I still think he's probably going to get 18, maybe 20 touches. And I think 5 of them will be catches, 5, maybe 6. So even without a touchdown in a cash game, Miles Sanders can pay off value. In a tournament, I think people are going to be a little more scared off than they would have been. I actually know they will be. So I think he's still fine to play because his ceiling is much higher than just the, kind of baseline 18 touches with 5 catches. If he scores a touchdown, if he scores 2 touchdowns, or they just unleash him, it's going to be huge. And yeah, at 6,300, that's an awesome play on DraftKings.
Yeah, another GPP play I like as it's like kind of borderline pay up, borderline mid tier, but Chris Carson, just because of all the guys that are around him at his price range, I love his matchup against the Falcons run defense. And he is like right in that range with Eckler and Mixon and Ingram and like those guys that might have a bit higher ownership or at least dilute some of his ownership at that price point. So I think Chris Carson is a play that I'm probably going to use. If not in cash, I might use him in cash games too. But like GPP wise, I think he's in a good spot that he might get a little bit overlooked.
Yeah, he makes me a little nervous this week. I'm kind of scared with a lot of teams. I feel like coming into this week are not going to give their bell cows or their running backs a full allotment of touches anyways, just because there's no preseason and everything's warming up. And I don't know, for some reason, I'm just a little scared off of Chris Carson. I do have one lineup that I've got him in, but it's definitely not cash. I personally wouldn't play him in cash, even with the Atlanta run defense the way it was. But in a tournament lineup, I can see it.
Okay, for sure. Into the middle grade, I have one guy that I'm like really going to play. And I mean, we talked about this guy when we talked about draft strategy like a couple weeks ago, and that's Mark Ingram. I think Mark Ingram at the beginning of the season, while J.K. Dobbins is like, I mean, he was fourth on the depth chart. I know depth charts don't really mean much, but I do think Dobbins is going to have a hard time getting acclimated into the offense early on. And we talked about Ingram's easy run schedule. I expect them to run all over the Browns, not just him, but the Ravens in general. I think this is going to be a blowout, personally. I think they're going to stomp them. And it should be a very positive script for someone like Mark Ingram against a pretty meh run defense. And they're very susceptible to explosive runs as well.
How much is Mark Ingram on FanDuel?
7K.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, on DraftKings, he's, I want to say 5,500. I landed on him a couple play, but I've kind of came off him. But yeah, I like Mark Ingram. He's on a great offense. Baltimore is projected to score a lot of points. Touchdowns are king in FanDuel especially. So yeah, I like that play. Moving on to kind of the value running backs, and this is kind of this is what's going to, I think, unlock a lot of this slate. Antonio Gibson is shaping up through the chalk, specifically on DraftKings. Not as much on FanDuel.
He's pretty cheap on FanDuel, too.
Yeah, he's 4,600, so a little bit above the min, but it's half point PPR. It's a little bit less enticing on FanDuel because the salary cap is just so loose. Like I made a faux lineup on FanDuel that I had Lamar Jackson, I had Zach Ertz, I had Devante Adams, I had Christian McCaffrey, I had like everybody on FanDuel, and I didn't really like need it, but I still think he's a good play. So that's the cash play. I think sometimes you just need to take the free square running back in cash games. Like if he's going to be 40% owned, you just say, you know what, I'm going to beat the rest of the field. I think he's going to get 12 to 15 touches. If he gets a touchdown, then he's for sure going to crush value. Otherwise, he's just not going to kill me. What I'm going to do in GPPs and tournaments, though, is I'm going to pivot off him. So on DraftKings, he's $4,000. I'm going to pivot at his direct price point to a guy like Chris Thompson or even James Robinson of the Jaguars. They
love Robinson for DraftKings specifically.
Yeah, Robinson's projected at like 4% ownership, and I like him. Thompson is what I mean. Thompson's projected like 8% ownership, so I'm just going to kind of sprinkle in a little bit. It's a direct pivot. I could see Thompson getting as many touches as Gibson with just much less ownership. So yeah, I'm just kind of those are my guys I'm throwing out there. I'll probably sprinkle a little bit more Thompson in just because I know the coach speak on Robinson is high and I want to like kind of buy all in, but the Colts defense I think will stuff him as far as runs go. So it's going to be all through the air. So I don't know. I feel like Chris Thompson's going to start the year as the pass catching back, and then Robinson will probably take over.
Yeah, for sure. And one guy I would suggest you avoid in the value range, I feel like a lot of people, like when they're scrolling down, especially on FanDuel, you see a lot of Jags, and then you see Zach Moss at 4,700. The Jets' run defense is very good. Like, it's very, very good. And we also don't know what Zach Moss's role is going to be. So I know, like, he's kind of just like a sexy name because of his redraft value, but definitely I would not be playing Zach Moss unless you're just kind of playing complete contrarian in a tournament. Boston Scott on FanDuel is actually very kind of opposite to the Miles Sanders thing. I think he'll probably be highly owned if Miles Sanders, we get more news that he's going to be limited and whatnot, because he is very cheap. He's like the same price as Antonio Gibson on FanDuel.
Yeah, Boston Scott keeps on DraftKings. He's 4,800, so he's completely out of play on DraftKings. But he's like, I don't know. If I'm playing someone from the Eagles backfield, it's going to be Miles Sanders. If I'm scared off of the injury, whatever, I'm probably just going to play no one from their backfield because it's always been such a shit backfield to play anyways.
Miles Sanders, good run defense too.
Yeah, exactly. Their line really scares me. I was really high on the Eagles at the beginning of this week. I mean, we're not going to go into defenses really, but a little nugget. Washington's defense is 2K on DraftKings. So like the stone min, the lowest you can go, $2,000 for a defense that, I mean, even if the Eagles put up 24 points, I could see the Washington getting like, 5-6 sacks potentially. With pressure comes, like they've kind of proven with defenses, the more like dropbacks, the more points. Usually actually kind of the more the defense scores because there's more potential to sack. There's more potential for interceptions.
Wentz sometimes hasn't been able to hold on to the football from a lot of accounts as well.
Totally. So anyways, just a little nugget for you. If you guys want to, throw a dart at the Washington defense, I might play them in cash. So
yeah, it's not a bad idea, especially if you're spending up at other positions. On to the wide receiver. Before we get into the wide receiver, I want to encourage you guys, if you've taken any value away from this, to hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hit the notification bell because we post videos pretty much every day. So into the wide receivers, the guy I'm paying up for, and this is going to be my cash game. Like I'm going to use him probably in every cash game lineup that I have, and that's Chris Godwin. With Mike Evans doubtful for this game, I know probably everyone's initial thought when they hear Mike Evans isn't playing is, well, Lattimore is going to be on Godwin, right? No, because Lattimore doesn't travel to the slot, so they will likely stick Lattimore on a side. And when Godwin's on the field and in like a 2-wide set where he's not in the slot, I'd imagine he's going to be on Godwin then. But when Bruce is going to get him mismatches in the slot, PFF's projected matchups from wide receiver cornerbacks. I tweeted this out a couple days ago, I believe. Chris Godwin has a 75% advantage over PJ Williams, who's the primary slot corner in New Orleans. I don't know if they're going to use Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in that role instead of PJ Williams, but for whatever reason, PFF projects it to be PJ Williams. And if Godwin's in the slot on PJ Williams, I can assure you he's going to torch him because he did it last year.
Yeah, I love Chris Godwin as a player. He's 7,700 on FanDuel, and so I haven't landed on him yet. At FanDuel, I still got to finish a lot of my lineups. I bet primarily I focus on DraftKings, and then I move over to FanDuel over the next couple of days. But on DraftKings, Chris Godwin's 7,100, and I just keep going to my guy who I'm going to say right now, who's 7,300, is Devante Adams. At 7,300, Devante Adams is just way too cheap to me. I maybe can see one game this year if he doesn't get injured that he doesn't get 10 targets. Like, I don't know how he doesn't just get over 10 targets every single game at least. And Minnesota's secondary is decimated. They lost all of their starters. They lost several pieces really across that defense. And I just think that kind of with the angry Aaron Rodgers thing coming out and he wants to get it to his guy, there is no one else. I love Aaron Jones, but he's like, that's your wide receiver too, is your running back. Like, I have no faith. Like Allen Lazard, I'm actually a bigger believer in than most people, but yeah, just at 7,300, like Devante should be 8K and he's 7,300
on FanDuel.
yeah. And even with the looser kind of pricing, I actually think that might even be a little cheap on FanDuel. 7,300.
He's only 300 more than Godwin on FanDuel.
Yeah, exactly. He's 200 more than Godwin on DraftKings. So I love Chris Godwin, but I just got to take the Saints are just a better team than Minnesota is, and Devante is the only target. If Mike Evans is out,
I think he's going to be.
Yeah, it's looking that way. I don't know. I like Godwin a lot. Yeah, I like Godwin. In cash though, I'm going Devante if I have the money.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the ownership projections I'm seeing right now have Devante Adams as potentially the third highest owned receiver. I honestly don't care though in a cash game. In a GPP, you might want to pivot, but in cash games, like I think it's you bite the bullet. If he's 40% owned, he's 40% owned. I don't think it matters because I think he is going to smash. Into the kind of mid-grade wide receivers, this is a guy I think will probably be pretty highly owned as well, and that's DJ Chark at 6,600 on FanDuel. As I mentioned for Minshew, I think there's just going to be a lot of garbage time production. Like his projected matchup, according to PFF, is Rocky Sin, who had a solid rookie season last year, but he doesn't scare me in the slightest off of DJ Chark. I think, the Jags offense is going to run through DJ Chark in the passing game, especially with we got undrafted free agents starting at running back. Like I'm pretty sure this whole offense is just going to be 10, 11, 12 targets a game to DJ Chark.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't have the only Jags I'm really playing this week right now is Chris Thompson and Robinson just to kind of as pivots. But I like Chark as a play. He's an awesome player. If you're kind of targeting Minshew, I think definitely the stack is Chark. You could even double stack it and play Laviska Shenault, who's kind of a nice value play, and then run it back, with a guy like Paris Campbell or a guy like T.Y. Hilton, something like that. And
T.Y. is going to be really chalky this week, I think. He's projected to be shadowed by Trey Herndon, who had like a 62 PFF grade last year.
See, I haven't heard much about Hilton, so I'd be surprised if he's chalky. I think he is a good play.
Sixth highest projected ownership on this, what I'm looking at right now.
On FanDuel or DraftKings?
On FanDuel. On DraftKings. On DraftKings.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard zero talk of T.Y. Hilton, so that's kind of that would surprise me. But the total's 45, so pretty decent total actually. Pretty middle of the road. I
think they're conservative this week as well. Like the over-unders in general, like across the board, I think they're expecting some sloppy football to be played, and that like in general, like the whole week one slate has kind of like a conservative over-under projection for each game. There's only one over 50.
Yeah. A lot of people are just like betting the under too, big time. Like I think they came out a little hot. The lines did, and then they've dropped a ton. So my guy, this is going to be kind of like a cash play. I think you can play him in both. He's definitely going to be high owned on DraftKings, and that's Terry McLaurin. He's 5,600. It's just too cheap. I know everyone wants to say like, aren't you scared of Darius Slay, yada, yada, yada. I'm just not, when it comes to the volume at 5,600, it's just not something I'm concerned about. I think they're going to get Terry the ball over and over and over again. 8 or 9 targets, I think, is his floor. And in my cash game teams, I'm trying to build for volume. So a guy like Devante, over 10 targets. McLaurin, probably over 10 targets. A guy like Metcalf, that can give you a little upside at 5,800. I love McLaurin's floor. And at 5,600, I'm all over him.
Yeah, for what it's worth, PFF actually they do have like the projected shadow of Darius Slay on Terry McLaurin, but it's a 40% advantage to Terry McLaurin based on how they performed last year. And maybe you could just chalk that up to Darius Slay not wanting to be in Detroit anymore. I don't know. Either way, I think Terry is good enough that he can beat Darius Slay. It's not like a crutch to him completely if he has Darius Slay on him. I 100% agree with the Terry McLaurin pick. I went with my boy Henry Ruggs. I think he's coming out week 1 and he's smashing because the Panthers corners are absolute hot trash. Like he's going to have Troy Pride Jr. or Dante Jackson on him, both of whom had like lower than 50 on PFF last year. Like they were horrible corners. And as I mentioned, the whole defense is like rebuilding. Like there's a lot of moving parts. I expect them to get absolutely like romped in the first quarter, especially like while they're getting their legs under them. And another guy, this is a GPP play, probably strictly. Jalen Reagor doesn't have an injury designation going into the game. So he's not like he practiced in full. He's not like questionable or anything like that. And I think Deshaun Jackson's going to be very highly owned. So Jalen Reagor might be kind of the contrarian to that in a tournament. Because I do think people are going to attack the Washington like secondary in this and play a lot of Carson Wentz and Deshaun Jackson. And Reagor and Wentz could be like a sneaky GPP stack that no one's doing.
Yeah, I like the Reagor call. I like Ruggs too. I personally wouldn't play Ruggs in cash, but I really like Ruggs as a play this week. Actually, one of my values here on DraftKings.
I was going to put him too, but I was like, you were already putting him down, so I was like, I'll let him talk about him.
Yeah, it's his teammate Bryan Edwards.
Yeah.
I mean, Bryan Edwards is at 4,200. I just project him to play at least 60% of the snaps, and I'm not going to play him in cash. I really wouldn't go anywhere near him in cash. But in a tournament, I mean, 60% of the snaps and running out of that X in a very fast-paced game against the Panthers with a terrible defense. The Raiders' defense is terrible. The Panthers' defense is terrible. So, I mean, really both teams can just let it fly. I'm Bryan Edwards at 4,200. I mean, to pay off tournament value, we're probably going to need a touchdown. But I see a huge upside potential. And my other guy, just to kind of knock him off in the value bin, is Marquise Hollywood Brown. On DraftKings, he's 5,100. That's just so cheap, I feel like, for Hollywood. I mean, he's the number 1 receiver. I mean, Mark Andrews probably is. But as far as wide receivers go, he's Lamar Jackson's number 1 wide receiver. And at 5,100, like, I'll play Hollywood in cash. I feel completely comfortable with him there.
He's 5,900 on FanDuel, below Jamison Crowder, Tyler Boyd, John Brown, AJ Green, and like a lot of those guys have bad matchups too.
Yeah, I like him way better than Deshaun Jackson this week, especially with all the kind of line injury stuff and Reagor coming back. So yeah, love Marquise, love Bryan Edwards, love Ruggs.
Yeah, projected DraftKings ownership of Marquise Brown, second highest among receivers, 40.5% is their projected ownership of him. So they definitely expect him to be used a lot. Is that it for the receivers? Yeah, on to the tight end position. I think this is probably the most obvious call of all time, but if you're paying up at tight end, it's got to be George Kittle. The number 32 tight end defense in the league last year. The only game that O.J. Howard was relevant for was against the Arizona Cardinals last year. I know they added Isaiah Simmons in the draft, but let's not pretend like he's not going to have a welcome to the NFL moment if he's covering George Kittle this week, because George Kittle is the best tight end in the league. And with Deebo Samuel out, with Ayuk questionable, like you can pretty much book 10 plus targets for George Kittle in this game.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I wrote. I mean, Kittle was if you're going to pay up for tight end, pay for George Kittle. I would say that on DraftKings, I don't think it's optimal to pay for him. He's 7,200 on FanDuel. You can fit him in. You could stack him with Garoppolo. It's a great stack actually, but on DraftKings, you can fit him. I just never like to pay up for tight end on DraftKings. I just don't think.
No, neither do I.
Yeah, I don't think it's optimal. So 7,200. I don't think he's like the smart play, but he is the best play at tight end. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, and on FanDuel, he's 8K, but he's like. To me, he should be significantly higher than everyone else. And Mark Andrews is only 600 less than him. So like is 600 less than him. I think he should be like 9,000, like on FanDuel. So that's where I kind of see the value in getting him, because I do think he is just going to absolutely smash this matchup. This one
Yeah.
is probably the guy who's going to be in most of my lineups at tight end, and that's Jared Cook at 5,900 on FanDuel. Antoine Winfield Jr. is the projected matchup per PFF, and if it's not Antoine Winfield Jr., it's going to be Jordan Whitehead, and both of whom cannot cover tight ends, at least not yet for Winfield Jr. So, I mean, it's a rookie-free safety in his first NFL game, and Jared Cook's a veteran player. He's a veteran tight end, and he's got a top 5 matchup according to PFF based on his advantage in their matchup projector. So I think Jared Cook at 5,900, I believe he's like the 8th most expensive tight end or like the 10th most expensive. I think that's great value. I think he should be in the top 6 because if you're going to attack the Bucs defense, I think that is where you attack it, is the safeties, whether you're going like over the corners or you're going over the middle with the tight end. So I think Jared Cook is a pretty well lock for my cash game lineups this week.
Yeah, it's a good take to hear something different. I haven't even thought about Jared Cook really. I've been kind of locked in on those like if I play a Saint, I'm pretty much just going to play Kamara or Thomas, and then I just don't really deal with the rest because it's just a headache for me. In the middle tight ends, I've been focusing on. I like Hayden Hurst. I like Mike Gesicki. Now with this Galladay news, I'm really liking Hawkinson. He's kind of coming out of nowhere at 4,200. But really, I mean, if we're talking cash, I'm going Hayden Hurst this week. He's 4,300 on DraftKings. He unlocks a lot
on FanDuel.
Yeah, which is a great price too. He just unlocks a lot. I think even if he doesn't fully step into that Hooper role, I think he'd go close. For sure in cash, he can pay off his value without a touchdown. If we get a touchdown, we're running all the way to the bank. Jamal Adams is a great safety, but he is not a cover safety. He's
also
safety.
Not projected to be the guy that's on him, at least. The way PFF projects it, they expect KJ Wright to be on it, he's a pretty good coverage linebacker. And if it's not KJ Wright, I'd probably expect it to be Quandre Diggs. So,
yeah,
I mean, Hayden Hurst is the 13th most expensive tight end on FanDuel, and I have him ranked as my tight end 8 this week in weekly rankings. So I think there's a value discrepancy there for sure.
Yeah, I just think I more bring up the Jamal Adams thing. I just think that people assume when you've got a safety that goes to the team and he's a good safety, that's going to, cover the tight end. I just more mean like they've never been that great at covering tight end, Seattle. So I like Hayden Hurst. I like that Ridley and Julio open up, and I like his price. If you want to pivot off Hayden Hurst on DraftKings, I think Gesicki at 200 more is a good he's 4,500. Devontae Parker's going to play. Preston Williams is going to play, but who knows how long they could potentially last. And I just saw Gesicki's for sure going to play. So I like them potentially targeting him more than their wide receivers just based on, the Gilmore effect and everything else. Like a lot of the Patriots defense opted out. So let's not forget that. And the Miami defense got way better. So yeah, I like Gesicki this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And low key, another like mid-tier guy that I actually don't mind is Gronk because it's the first game. Evans is probably going to be out. It's the first game Brady's with a new team. He might look to his old buddy, his good old target that he has chemistry with already. And he has the number 1 projected advantage per PFF with Alex Anzalone as the primary coverage guy. I mean, they have 3 elite safeties though, so I'd imagine they're probably going to put one of Jenkins, Gardner Johnson, or Marcus Williams primarily on Gronk. But either way, I think he's not a bad play. And in terms of GPP, I think OJ Howard is my favorite play in GPP for the tight end position for pretty much the same reasons I just mentioned for Gronk. Evans being out and all that stuff. I think they're going to use him as a move tight end. Apparently, he's had an awesome camp, and I think he's going to be a little bit more fantasy relevant than people are giving him credit for this year in general. And I think in this game, this is how they might attack him is with these 2 tight ends.
Yeah, potential high-scoring game is never a bad thing to target when it comes to tight ends. My value tight ends that I'm going towards is so I'll just first mention Chris Herndon, who's not the guy that I'm gravitating towards, but he is kind of what the field seems to be gravitating toward as far as a value tight end goes. I just don't play tight ends against the Bills. They are really good against tight ends.
Poyer locks him down.
Yeah, like they're just really good against tight ends. And so I think you can go other directions. Ian Thomas is $100 more in that really fast-paced game with potential for a lot of scoring. He's healthy. He's going to play at 3,400. I think he's a great play. And if you really want to dig down below, like Hurst, I think is the cash play. But if you want to dig down deep and just kind of punt, Logan Thomas on the Redskins is 2,800. You could throw him in the tight end slot. There's been a lot of buzz around him with training camp. Al Smizzle, the Smiz Life, who plays a lot, he's really on Logan Thomas. And yeah, I'm just so it's just someone I can throw out there. If you're needing to save at tight end, you could bump down to Logan Thomas at 2,800.
True. And my Toronto Raptors just lost, so I'm a little upset.
Oh,
But
damn.
my one thing on Ian Thomas though is the Corey Littleton is projected to be his primary matchup, and Corey Littleton was like an elite coverage linebacker last year, so I don't know about that matchup. I'll probably be sticking away from him because I think Littleton is very good in coverage. Do you want to talk about defenses real quick before we get into our stacks and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think typically just in general, I don't like to pay up for defense unless I'm paying up to be contrarian. Definitely in cash. Like, here's just my cash hint, and this has helped me a lot to win money over the last couple of years. Just find the cheapest defense you feel comfortable playing and play them. When it comes to cash, just do that. Don't overthink it. Don't try and do anything cute. Just find the cheapest defense you feel comfortable with, because we just can't predict defense. Shit happens. Going with the highly projected, like most owned defense works sometimes, but almost really very rarely, I feel like, because it's so unpredictable. You know, you can get a spike week from anyone. All it takes is like an interception return for a touchdown, a fumble, something like that. So yeah, I think this week the Redskins, like I said, at 2K, if you want to bump up a little higher, I mean, the Colts are like the safe defense, you know, quote unquote, at 3K. But that's the kind of team that just feels like a trap almost as a defense. It feels like a slow game. It doesn't feel like fun. It doesn't feel like there's going to be a lot of sacks or pressures or anything like that. I'm looking for like the Redskins, where there could be points, but there could be sacks. Even the Dolphins I've thought about. You know,
the Dolphins is my pick at the value defense as well, because they have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones like on their back end, and Cam Newton might have some rust on him. I think there's a chance that they get some turnovers off Cam.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking. I don't mind the Seahawks defense. I know that sounds wild in the Atlanta Seahawks game, when it's like a game that I love. We're going to talk about it in a second. But sometimes games like that are high scoring are the best, because there's going to be a ton of dropbacks, ton of potential for pressure, just like I've been talking about. So Seahawks at 2,400. And yeah, I mean, some people have even talked about the Carolina defense at 2,500. So it's not something I'm going to play, but just in general, you want that fast-paced potential for sacks.
Yeah, I think if you're going to play, if I were to pay up at defense in a GPP or something to be contrarian, I think I would pay up for the Bills on FanDuel. It's 4,700.
It's too slow of a game.
It's too slow of a game, but it's a turnover-prone quarterback with a lack of weapons right now, and I mean, it's also a top 5 like pass defense. But in terms of another kind of like mid-tier one that I don't mind is the Lions defense against Mitch Trubisky on the road. Like, I don't think that's like a terrible combination either. I know the Lions defense isn't the greatest in the world, but that might be a little bit of a slugfest too. So
yeah, actually at the beginning of the week, the Lions were kind of where I was going towards. On DraftKings, they're 2,700. The only thing that's gotten me off of them now is their pass rush sucks balls. So I don't want to. Mitch has the potential to still royally screw the whole thing up. So it's still a good play. I'm not playing them in cash anymore because of the sacks. But yeah, I like the Lions a lot too.
For sure. And we've already talked about this matchup a lot. So we'll get into our matchups that we're targeting this week. And for me, it's the Raiders and Panthers. I already talked about it. Aside from both of the obvious running backs that you can play in this matchup, I think all the passing options present a lot of value, in my opinion. I think the Ruggs and Carr stack was my runner-up in terms of the stack of the week, which we'll get into in a couple minutes. But I think Waller's going to be a solid play against Carolina defense. Edwards is a nice GPP dart throw, as you mentioned. I also think from the Panthers side, Curtis Samuel is a good GPP dart throw as well. They've talked about using him as like an H-back or whatever. Like, I don't really know what they're going to use him for, but I think Rule is creative enough to actually utilize Curtis Samuel correctly. So I could see him being like a hot waiver wire ad after week 1 and everyone being like, oh, Curtis Samuel, it's all the air yards are paying off or whatever. So I'm really targeting this game because I like both quarterbacks too, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I think you can just really play anyone in this game. It's kind of what makes it so fun. I mean, even Robbie Anderson is a guy you didn't mention. He's someone that could potentially pop off. I mean, you can double stack it a million different ways. You can play Teddy with DJ Moore and Robbie, Teddy with Curtis Samuel and Robbie, Teddy with Robbie and Ian Thomas, run it back with Ruggs. You can play Derek Carr with Ruggs, Edwards. I mean, like literally everyone in this game, Jacobs, McCaffrey, like they're all in play. So it's an awesome game. Super bad defenses, fast paced too. Like the Panthers play fast. And I love that. So, yeah, it's an awesome game. Rolling into mine is another game that we've talked about a little bit, and that's Atlanta-Seattle. The total has kind of bounced all over the place. It's at 49 at this point. So, yeah, it's just easy teams to pick from. Matt Ryan's a great quarterback. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. Julio and Ridley are the receivers that they go to. Metcalf and Lockett are the receivers that they go to. Seattle doesn't even really have a tight end to throw to. So, Will Disley just went down again. It looks like it's rough, over there. And then Hayden Hurst, So, in general, there's just a lot of potential.
I like the two backs, too, to be honest. Not necessarily in DFS, just I think they'll both have decent games, in terms of redraft if you have to start or sit them.
Oh, yeah. In redraft, yeah, you definitely can sit them. But, I mean, in DFS, I'm kind of off Carson for now. Gurley is someone I'm actually interested in playing a little bit in GPPs just for the potential of, they just don't have anyone else that's any good. So I could see that maybe they just come out and they give him way more touches than I think they will, and he'll get a lot of goal line carries. So, yeah, he's 6,100. He's potential to go there. But, yeah, that's my game of the week, Atlanta-Seattle.
Yeah, I'm prepared for Gurley to get 25 touches a game for 3 straight weeks to start the season because I ripped on him all summer and everyone would be like, you idiot, he's getting 25 touches a game. And then when he goes down in week 4 or he gets benched in week 4 or something, then I look like a genius. But
yeah, well, my David Johnson take's looking good after week 1. So
yeah, he actually kind of looked good too, which is
he looked awesome.
Part.
That jump cut, I was like, dude, it's like vintage David Johnson. He looked fast. He looked nimble. That touchdown, seriously, when he stretched the pylon, let's just live in the glory that David Johnson is bringing to my fantasy teams right now. So, anyways, he's crushing.
I said it at the beginning of the summer. I'm like, between Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, and David Johnson, I'm going to be wrong about one of them. I guarantee I'm going to be wrong about one of them, but I don't want
any of them. It's not Le'Veon Bell, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, my stack of the week, I'll get into the stacks of the week now, is from the game that you just mentioned. Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett is my stack of the week. Lockett averaged 28.7 PPR points per game against the NFC South last year, just a stat I found on Twitter. And Russell Wilson also averaged 35 pass attempts per game against this division as well. So, as I mentioned, for Wilson, PFF projects the matchups to be pretty favorable for the receivers. Darqueze Dennard is supposed to be the primary slot. He's actually probably the best corner on Atlanta, but Lockett has a pretty sizable advantage, a 20% advantage according to PFF. And when Lockett's on the outside in 2 wide sets, he's going to be up against rookie AJ Terrell or third-year player Isaiah Oliver, whoever one DK Metcalf's not on. And I think Lockett is just going to absolutely crush in this game. He went 6 targets, 6 receptions, and 100 yards against Atlanta last year. And Russell Wilson only threw the ball 20 times in that game.
Yeah, I remember that game. That was such a bummer. I played Russ that week, and he just barely threw. But I love Tyler Lockett this week, especially on DraftKings as a pivot off of DK Metcalf. He's 6,500 and Metcalf's 5,800. So Metcalf's the clear cash play, but Lockett's just going to probably have lower ownership just because he's $700 more.
I like him in cash better, dude. I actually like him better.
Not at the price. I paying $700 more. It's not worth it. Metcalf has enough touchdown potential, but at 5,800, it's, in my opinion, it's the better play. Lockett they both have a lot of, they go like this a lot, but yeah, I don't know. At least for me, 5,800 for DK is the cash play, but Lockett is the lower owned for sure pivot in tournaments. So if you like Lockett,
did you say he was more expensive than DK on DraftKings?
700.
Okay, yeah, he's only 400 more expensive on FanDuel, if that's worth anything.
Yeah, and FanDuel is much different so 400 is way tighter. $700 on DraftKings is a lot. That's the difference between me being able I'm almost to Devante Adams basically. By the time I get to Lockett from DK. So, anyways, yeah, but both are great plays though. I just want to say that I love DK Metcalf and Lockett this week. So my stack is Marvin Jones, and that's from Stafford. I've actually been on this stack from before the Golladay news. I'm actually hoping Golladay plays so that I can play Matt Stafford.
Highest projected ownership of any player is Marvin Jones, according to the projections I'm looking at.
That's so wild. That's whatever projections you're looking at are much different than the projections that I have from Roto Grinders. They're very different. So I guess we'll see. But I mean,
yours are probably better, but it's because isn't Roto Grinders paid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yours
Yeah,
are probably
but
better than this, but that's what they project on it's fantasy football calculator. So I don't know how much you want to
oh,
be taking into that.
okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll see. Either way, Marvin Jones, I think, is a great play. I honestly really hope Galladay doesn't play so I can play all the Marvin Jones. But either way, I don't think he's a good enough. Personally, I'm not going to play him in cash just based on kind of the price. But in tournaments, I'm going to play him. And the way I'll do it, if Galladay doesn't play to differentiate, is I'll play Marvin Jones and Hawkinson, and then I'll run it back with either one of Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller, just to give it some kind of, I want to mix it up. And the best way to do that is to stack twice. If everyone's going to play Marvin Jones and I still want to play him, I'm just going to add more to that stack because I believe the Lions are going to go off. So yeah, that's where I'm going this week.
Yep. All right, let's get into our locks. And you really just talked about mine. My lock is Marvin Jones on FanDuel. He's 6,200. The one thing I want to talk about with Marvin Jones is for some reason everyone's scared of Kyle Fuller. Like I've heard people be like, "Well, Kyle Fuller is going to be on him now that Galladay's out." Like Kyle Fuller is not a shutdown guy. He's like Marcus Peters. He gets turnovers. He's not a shutdown corner. He's 62 grade. He had a 62.6 grade for BFF last year. Marvin Jones averages 10 targets per game since 2017 in games where Kenny Golladay hasn't played. So for cash games, I really love Marvin Jones this week because I think he's going to get 8 to 10 targets.
Yeah, Marvin, I mean, we said it all. Marvin Jones is awesome. Love him as a player. People need to stop sleeping on Marvin. I have him on every dynasty team because he's a beast. My lock is, I've talked about him a lot as well, Devante Adams. He's just too cheap this week. I don't see how he doesn't go off at 7,300. I don't know if you need him and want to play him in tournaments for sure, but I'm going to play him just because I think he's good. He'll probably be in all my lineups. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yep. And it's worth noting on Marvin Jones too, that if they do get him off of Fuller, if he's not like shadowing or they just like move sides or whatever, the Bears have a rookie Jalen Johnson starting opposite Kyle Fuller. So I think it's two good corner matchups. And PFF before Kenny Golladay got hurt projected Kenny Golladay to see primarily Jalen Johnson. And he would have been, had he been healthy right now, he probably would have been a smash play. But yeah, so that's the first DFS show, ladies and gentlemen. We are into week 1. We're super excited. We're done talking about sleepers and values and busts and must draft players and all that stuff. I'm certainly done talking about it. I'm just ready to be wrong about all the old running backs that I hated on. So, again, as I mentioned before, guys, make sure you guys hit this button. Looks like this. If you enjoyed this video, comment down below any of your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell icon because we post videos pretty much every day. Join the Discord in the description as well. That thing's popping. We got a lot of people joining that. We answer pretty much every question you could have. Start, sit, evaluate my lineup, trade targets, all that stuff. So make sure you guys get in there if you're new to fantasy especially. All right, take it easy, guys. Enjoy your Saturday.
Cool. Later.